Hello and welcome to Faith, Friends, and Leadership. Today, we're joined by Dan Williams, a veteran real estate leader and now author of the book Live Today, A Journey to Life Without Regret. After decades in the high pressure world of real estate, Dan realized that while it's easy to make more money, it's impossible to make more time. This realization led him on a 2 year journey of reflection, resulting in a framework for living that prioritizes foundation, family, and friendships over default busyness. I'm excited for this conversation. Dan, welcome to the show.
Man, Zach, it's great to be here, and I believe God brought us together through real estate for such a time as this, without a doubt.
For sure. Well, for our listeners, why don't you go ahead and just tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey so far?
Yeah, I am in real estate, and I've been in it about 11 years, pastored for 30 years. And so when I left the pastorate, I didn't know what I was going to do, and I realized that God wanted me in the marketplace. And that transition was tough. It was a very dark time in our life, but just the faith that we saw God at work through it. It's a lot easier in hindsight. Born and raised right here in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and this is home, and just ready to get an important message out that God's placed on my heart.
Yeah. Now, what did you do prior to real estate?
I pastored 30 years, and that was broke up in some full-time pastorate, bivocational. Somebody might not know what bivocational means. That means you're preaching for not much and you're making a living doing something else. So I ran construction businesses and those type things, but I started a church in 1993. We had 17 people. We grew to a little right at 1,000 people. And then we figured out a way to run half of those off. And so the journey through 30 years of ministry, starting a new church, it was had some great times that few people will ever experience in ministry. Had some tough times as well, but God has really used real estate for me to understand what's going on in the world and what people are fighting against.
Yeah. And so you had mentioned, so 2 years ago, you had a pretty strong aha moment and experience that convinced you that, hey, maybe I should capture some of my experiences and put them in a book. So could you just walk us through how that came about?
Yeah, I've been in coaching now for probably 8 years, I guess, about right. When I got in coaching, and now I recommend it for everybody in every situation, just to kind of help move things forward. But I'd been in coaching, I became a coach, and so as you know, when you're coaching, you have coaches, and then you have a coach that teaches you how to coach, and so you're really in a busy coaching environment. Over, the years, at that point, I was 61. I really, in just talking with those coaches, is we'd built a successful business in real estate. And getting older, I wanted to pass something on to my kids and grandkids that would say, this is what Pop believes. Uh, and, you know, 5, 6 years ago, one of my best friend died of COVID, and he had a lot of desires that didn't get fulfilled because he didn't do them. And so, talking with my coaches just about that, one of them said, "Why don't you just go ahead and write a book?" And we battled that around probably 2 or 3 months, and finally, I just realized it was God saying, "Here's what I want you to do." And really, you'd prayed a while ago about tapestry and weaving, and um, the way God brought all this about was, I mean, as you stand back, you're like, that's how God does miracles too.
Yeah.
Very, 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 very much so.
Yeah. Some of the best parts of being a Christian is when you find yourself in situations you can't explain with logic.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is one of them. Just so many things God lined up that I wasn't smart enough to.
Yeah, part of that alignment was a piece of advice that you had received. Um, and that was don't let the church or the business steal your family. So how did that early testimony shape the way you've led your real estate team, your family, and just navigated kind of the temptations, right, of the marketplace and of the world?
Yeah, that's probably maybe in the top 3 statements I heard, and it was from the first pastor I served under. I was a student minister for 2 years, and I realized God definitely wasn't calling me to that. And so I was entering pastoral ministry, rural church, small church, but it'd been around for 100 and something years. And he said, before you go, I just got one piece of advice is don't let the church steal your family. And that resonated with me then. And I took heed to it, thankfully. A very wise man. And I realized as long as I said yes, I was saying no to something else. And he had said that out of, he had been a great pastor, a good preacher, but he was really excellent at pastoring. And that's what really comes in competition with things that matter most to you is the pastoring. And that sounds so foreign, but pastoring is taking care of everyone except mine. And so I made a commitment that I was not going to let the church steal my family, that if my family had something meaningful happen, I was going to be there. And I did that throughout my kids' life. I was always on the sidelines. I coached my son. I was always at my other son's music events. My daughter, she played a lot of sports. I made sure I was there because I felt like if I didn't minister and show up to my family, what I did for the rest of the world really didn't matter. And and I had grown up in something very different. The book talks a lot about, not a lot, but it starts out just about my first 20 years, 18, 20. I got married when I was 20. Parents divorced when I was 13, but we were in church most of the time, but we didn't live a convicted life, Christian conviction life during the week. My dad was a home builder and those type things. So we, um, the best way I term it is we were American moralists. And I think sometimes we get that confused with Christianity. And what I mean by that is we were good people trying to do the right things, help people. And, in the 1960s and 70s, that looked Christian. It wasn't a lot about taking it outside the church. There wasn't much talked about missions, any of those things, but we were in church. And that was kind of the definition of the Christian life. And then when we got home, it really didn't resemble what it should have. Now, I thought that's the way all Christian people live. Okay. Is they partied and they did all kind of crazy stuff through the week. And then on Sunday, they went to church. So I met my wife when I was 17, and her family was kind of like Ozzie and Harriet, which, if you don't know who that is, you need to look it up. It's just, I think, a 1950s show where everything was always in order. And that was so foreign to me. And her dad was probably the most godly man I ever knew. He knew how to live out his faith every day. He knew what his foundation was, and he put his family and took care of friends and just kind of totally turned my thought around of what a Christian man looks like
Yeah.
in a family environment. And I don't think, Zach, until I left the ministry and went in real estate that I totally understood the battle that Christian adults are facing. Once I got out into the marketplace, it's different than being in the bubble of the church. And that was a revelation.
Yeah. Yeah, different perspective on the way to engage with culture.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's um, the marketplace in real estate is a very competitive. There's no ceiling to it in that somebody says, okay, when you do this, that's good. Is this, if you do this, okay, now what are you going to do? And it's always got to be growing, and it's always success oriented, and it's always falls into this comparison game. And um, it's hard. And then on top of that, you got folks like yourself that you're got children at home and you're trying to navigate that. Or some people dealing with, I'm in the place where I got grandchildren around and my kids are grown. But most every young person, I have several on my team here in their 20s and 30s with young kids. And the thing I find is every one of them are tired. And I think that is, I had one walk through my office this morning, and I said, "How are you?" He said, "I'm tired." Um, and I think that happens. One, we're so busy, but one, we're out of alignment in how our life should be functioning.
Yeah, man, so impactful, and there's a lot there. The book obviously addresses
Yeah,
that alignment, and we can get into that a little bit too, which is why I would, yeah, highly recommend anyone there, because it is a culture is driving for more, 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 right? And Jesus is calling us less, 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 and just more of Him. And there's a constant battle of different hats, different arenas, environments that we're wearing, where we're navigating that tension where there shouldn't be a tension. There is.
yeah, and that's you got to know what matters to you, and that's what I really want people to sit down and let resonate within their soul and spirit is, um, what do I want my life to really look like? What do I want my world to look like? What do I want my kids to remember? I heard something the other day is, 50 years from now, somebody's going to be telling a story about you to somebody you never knew. What are they going to be saying? Thought, man, that's strong right there. Uh, because, is one of the things that really, when I, through the real estate and then the Christian aspect was, and you're familiar with the term life by design, not by default, is designing your life and understand God's doing the work. But I believe we spend more time planning a 1 week trip to Disney, Yellowstone, wherever, than we spend planning out our life. We got people that they don't know what they want for their own life. They don't know what they want for their families, and they're not. And this sounds like a strong word. They're not vetting their friendships, and friends are key relationships. You have friends and you have facilitators, which one, and a facilitator can be more fun sometimes. But I would hope and pray through the frameworks that we put out there and everything that somebody over a period of time could just sit down and say, I got to think about my life a little harder. I got to think about how my relationship with Christ is showing up in every other place. I started out as I wanted my desire is for the book to not be overtly Christian. I just kind of wanted people to see, here's how I lived it out. It started with the foundation, and it took me 2 days, maybe 3, as I started writing. that I could not separate my faith from my story. It would be kind of like trying to pull milk out of a cake recipe. It is so ingrained with who I am, and I don't have it hammered out. Uh, but I do understand grace and mercy and forgiveness and consequences and convictions. But it is everything ties back to what I believe. And for me, my foundation is the scriptures and my relationship with Jesus Christ. The scriptures, I can hand you this Bible and say, here's the scriptures. My relationship with Jesus Christ, I really can't explain it to you. I can tell you that it drastically changed everything in my life. I was radically saved December 15th, 1985. And I've always struggled with someone getting saved, giving their life to Christ, and there not being any change. I was under such conviction that I tell people I'm a recovering Pharisee. Uh, but even God worked that for good.
So just to recap, so you said some powerful, powerful things. And I think I just want to recall some of these even for my own sake, because it's so powerful in the way in which you shared it. So first off, yeah, a life by design, not by default. I would change design to intention, right? There needs to be intentionality in what you do. And even with our relationship with Christ, there should be intention. Now, our attention should be on Him, but there should be intention in the way we structure that relationship and lean into it. And then, as you said, right, in that intentionality, who are the friends around that you're locking arms with to do that? And you have a choice about that because it's back to the intentionality. Not all people should be able to speak into your life and have weight, right? We should be selective when it comes through there. And then thirdly, I love how important it is because it is difficult when you've had an encounter with Christ to explain, to interpret, to separate all parts of your life from that relationship with Christ because so much of the world is looking for an identity, which is just a label. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a grandpa, I'm a pastor, I'm a leader, I'm a real estate agent, all these different things. But once you come to that encounter, you have it and you become a child of God, that's all you know. And the rest is very difficult. And you can tell, I would agree with you, you can tell someone who had an encounter with Jesus because their life now, the audio matches the video, right? And everything they see, they live it out. And you can tell this is someone that had a radical shift in their perspective. And that's attributed to an encounter with Jesus.
Yeah, and it's last week I was teaching on a section out of Psalm 119, and if you read your Bible, one thing I love about it is it's just very raw. It is real life situations. It wasn't life's going to be easy. You're not going to have any problems. And this particular section, the psalmist was feeling abandoned and isolated and had all these different fears. And the one thing that turned him back, his tipping point back to his foundation, is he reflected on how much God loved him. And that tipped him back. Okay, so your promises, all of that are good, and it tipped on that love he has for him. But what you talk about with the intentionality is true. Is the problem I'm seeking to fix in the world with this book is, and it started with my life, is okay. A lot of times you end up somewhere and you have regret. What caused that? And typically it's just a drift, and we don't notice drift. It doesn't happen all at one time. It's just very gradual. But if we don't pay attention intentionally, we end up somewhere we never dreamed we would be. And so we see marriages that, I've married a bunch of people, and you couldn't talk them out of getting married if you gave them $1 million because they're so in love. And then you talk to them 5 years later and they're ready to get a divorce. And like, what happened? And it's just they drifted because they wasn't making sure they were living every day the way they wanted the results to be. And that's the reason the title of it is Live Today Well, is because I can't worry about tomorrow. I told a buddy of mine the other day is he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Man, I'm trying right now. I'm struggling just to stay in today." But one thing in real estate is it's a 30-day business. You can have money this month and next month you don't.
And
And
you're starting
so,
a new business, new book of business each month.
yeah, and so you're out there and you're thinking about June and July, and dang, we're right here in May. So it's just coming down to day. And so, how can I live out what I believe about 7 main areas of my life on this day? And how can I start that day? Who do I spend it with? And being intentional, because the cure to the problem of regret and drift is intentionality. That's how you solve it. It's not just going to happen. I interviewed a lot of people that, in my view, they did life well. They didn't ever have to go get the kids out of jail or anything like that. Not meaning if you did, you didn't do it right, but that just standing back, it's people you'd be like, "Tell me what you did." And it was folks that just they stuck to what they believed. They raised their kids by those beliefs, and it carried on generation after generation. Now I do address in the book, it's normal for in those teenage years for them to start questioning everything they've been taught. But if you've really established foundation and they've lived with somebody that's intentional living, intentionally making daily decisions, they won't get to the other end and say, "Man, I sure hate I did that." No, man, I paid so much attention today. It didn't go just right, but I was paying attention. It wasn't just happening. It was intentional. No.
Yeah.
You've heard of Phil Jones?
Yep. Yeah, redeeming your time. Or no, Phil Jones is exactly what to say, right?
Yeah,
Or
exactly
yeah.
what to say. And he talks, like when you're going home and you're fixing to go into your house, know what you're going to say to your spouse before you walk in the door. And that's intentional living, because you might walk in, if you're not prepared, you might say the wrong thing. And so it's staying mindful. And, you know, I believe the book is good for a lot of people. When I've met with the strategists that helped me with it, they say, "Who's this for?" I said, "It's for my wife, kids, and grandkids, and a few friends." And he said, "So who would it benefit?" I said, "Everybody in the world." He said, "Why are you not trying to get it to them?" And, and that's where it kind of changed to where we are today, to just try to get it in as many hands. And with that in their Bible, they figure out their path, because our paths are different, but they do have some overlaying aspects that are the same.
Yeah, that are the same.
Yeah.
Well, let's finish with this because in your book, you talk about two bookends, and you mentioned it here briefly, but I wanted to go back and just explain kind of that framework to us a little bit more detail, specifically around day stacking, because that's what you're talking about and being present and what that looks like within the book, to make sure that we're not like bouncing around in the middle somewhere, that we're finding some of that success. So that's a big question, but maybe if you could just break that down from the book and dive into that a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. Is the bookends is foundation and time. Okay. I began with money on the other end because everything takes money. But in going through this whole process, I realized the amount of time we have is a mystery, but how we use it is critically important. And so every decision I make in a day bounces between my foundation and my okay. If it's about family, do I have time? What do I believe about this? If it's about my business, when am I going to do it? And so everything's competing in my life. I don't know if you're old enough. One of the first video games was Pong. and it was a little ding, ding, and you just slid the little cursor and kept making it bounce back and forth. Well, that's what we do throughout a day is, okay, you have this opportunity come before you and you say yes or no. And then you have another one. And so everything's bouncing around between, okay, here's what I believe. It gives me some firm yeses and nos. Here's my time. I've got 24 hours. And I know I've got to have health. So there's 8 hours. I know I've got to work. There's probably 8 hours. I know. So when you really look at it, the things that matter most to you, your faith, your family, most everybody I've asked, those two was in everybody's list. Now, realize I'm not in a real secular state, but faith and family was both of them. And then it varies a little bit. But when I think about that, how am I going to live my life in a 24-hour period that reflects what I believe? And I believe it. How am I going to do that with my family, my friends, my key relationships, my health, my money, and then that time? And then your day stack is if I can get today pretty good and I can just stack up some pretty good days, I'll be amazed what happens in 30 days, 60 days, 365 days. You know, the book Atomic Habits, if somebody wants to know how you stack, that's a great book. It is exhaustive about it. And it gets all the way down to habit stacking is, you know, if you're trying to figure out when am I going to have my devotional, well, put it right behind when you brush your teeth because you're going to brush your teeth every day. And so then I'm going to read a little devotional to get started. And so it's just small incremental things. And so if we can day stack like that and realize it's just two things. What do you believe? And how much time do you have? Now, I've heard of a new term. It's since I wrote the book. I would have put this in the book. You've heard of FOMO, fear of missing out. And what the college generation's dealing with now, according to a professor I taught with, is FOBO, FOBO, and it's fear of a better offer. And so they don't make commitments because they might get a better offer. And so that goes to your foundation. And so if I make a commitment to you, that's a foundational issue on a time frame. And so I make that commitment. Well, now we're dealing with people who don't want to do that because their foundation is not strong enough on that integrity of a commitment. It's very interesting. It's what we're battling. And so taking the time, nail it down and say, how can I live today and it be the best day I can live? And every day is different. This afternoon, I'm taking a grandson to baseball practice. That's not an everyday activity. They're staying with us while the parents are out of town. But that's the best place I can be today from 5 to 7:30. There's no other place on planet Earth during that time I can be unless there's some kind of catastrophic emergency. And then I'm going to go home, and that's the best place I can be with my wife. And, you know, right now I'm on here with you. Why am I here with you? I believe this is the best investment of my time for this minute as we try to help strengthen the Christian community and families. Because, and I don't know if I'd have listened, but if I would have had this mindset when I was 20 and 30 and raising young kids, it might have been a little different. But I realize all those people are really tired, but they really need to understand the whole alignment. It's not a hack, it's not a time hack, any of those things. It's not a life balance approach. It's a, am I in alignment? And just real quickly is, do I align with my foundation first? How does this affect my family? How does it affect my friendships, my health, my money, and my time commitment? And when those seven are there, uh, you end up doing the things that are most important to you. And the statement that came to me writing the book that has really stuck is the people that love you most will thank you. And if I do, one of the things I might do to a fault is I love my family fiercely. And I wanted them to have this, but I also think does it have all the answers? No, the Bible has that. But this can help you kind of put some pieces together.
Yeah, absolutely. I have no doubt in that. And we'll put the link to that book to be able to purchase it for our listeners. Highly recommend that you do that so you can get involved in Dan's world and lock arms. You know, I always look at it, and none of us are getting out alive on this earth. We might have some differences about the afterlife, but it's important that we lock arms, encourage each other, and support each other and help on this journey. Dan, thank you so much.
Absolutely. And if anybody wants to call me, they can call me. I'll be glad to talk with them. Phone number's 205-292-2108. If I don't answer, leave a message and I'll call you back because I want to help people get where they know God wants them to go.
Love it. Till next time, keep living a life of faith, building up your friends, and embracing the journey. God bless.
Thank you, man.